Yesterday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a detailed conversation with India Today Group editorial director Raj Chengappa, in which he spoke on a variety of issues relating to demonetization. This is Prime Minister Modi's first interview since demonetization, the first time he's taken questions from any journalist. Let me start by bringing you key highlights of the Prime Minister's big interview.
मैं भी ऐसे ही चलने दूं कि ठीक करूं? जरा जोर से बताओ, ठीक करूं?
Demonetization is a failed experiment.
कुछ मत बोलो कब्बर आ जाएगा। क्या है? सबको डराता है।
क्या इतिहास इन 70 साल जिन्होंने बर्बाद किए उनको माफ करेगा क्या?
डिमोनेटाइजेशन का जो देश को झटका मारा है, ये उन्होंने पर्सनल बेसिस पे मारा है।
अभी भाषण सीख रहे हैं, ऐसे का तो हो भी
Nothing has occupied the Prime Minister's mind more than his 2016 surgical strike on cash. If 2016 had to be assigned a flavor, it is undoubtedly Namo's demonetization. While Prime Minister Modi has spoken of little else on the election trail since he detonated demonetization, he took the time out to give India Today his first interview since the mega move. Speaking to Group Editorial Director Raj Chengappa, the Prime Minister has provided what is his most detailed, candid and no-holds-barred defence, assessment and projection on a policy bombshell that affects every one of India's 1.2 billion people. While the full interview is in the pages of the new edition of India Today, we round up the 12 most hard-hitting portions. This is Prime Minister Modi, unplugged and unreserved on demonetization. Our interview begins with the Prime Minister's first detailed view on the outcome of demonetization.
Black money has all been forced out into the open, whomsoever it may belong to, whether it is corrupt politicians, bureaucrats, businessmen or professionals. Counterfeit notes, which our intelligence agencies had reported to be available in high volumes with our enemies, have been instantly neutralized. Similarly, cash held by terrorists, Maoists and other extremists has also been neutralized. There has been a crippling impact on dangerous and highly damaging illegal activities such as human trafficking and narcotics trade as well.
But what about the PM's view on the frequent modifications post-demonetization and the air of uncertainty that has prevailed?
Regarding frequent modifications, one must be able to distinguish between Niti and Raniti and not put them in the same basket. The decision of demonetization, which reflects our Niti, is unequivocally clear, unwavering and categorical. Our Raniti, however, needed to be different, aptly summarized by the age-old saying of tu dal dal, main paat paat. We must stay 2 steps ahead of the enemy. When problems are identified, we respond promptly and take necessary steps. Far from indicating poor implementation, this speaks of our agility in responding quickly and keeping up with the evolving situation. I know many will prefer that we issue one guideline and then allow them to walk roughshod over it. Let me assure them that no such thing will happen.
Through this interview to India Today, the PM has also issued his most dire warning to the corrupt.
If the enemy runs, we will chase them. If they change their tactics, we will change ours. When the corrupt find new methods of cheating, we will identify new methods to clamp down on the same.
What about the political outcome and opposition criticism? Listen into the PM's most direct counterattack.
I pity a few of our opponents, especially the Congress leadership, for the desperation they've been exhibiting. Congress leaders are entirely preoccupied with only one thing: elections. There is nothing political in the demonetization decision. It was a tough decision taken to clean up our economy and our society. If I were guided by short-term electoral politics, I would have never done so.
Remember the biggest political ambush by his predecessor Manmohan Singh. Here's how Prime Minister Modi hits back for the first time.
In the process of demonetization, monumental mismanagement has been undertaken.
Regarding Manmohan Singh ji, it is interesting that the words monumental mismanagement came from a leader who has been at the helm of India's economic journey for around 45 years. His reference to organized loot was perhaps a reference to the unending string of scams under his leadership, from the coal scam to the 2G and the CWG scams. Demonetization, on the other hand, is an unprecedented step to confiscate the loot of the corrupt.
In the most explosive charge, though, the Prime Minister has accused the Congress of openly supporting the dishonest.
The government tried its best to keep the parliament functioning. I was keen to speak in both houses. Yet, there was a concerted attempt by the Congress to derail the functioning of the houses rather than have a proper debate. While opposition in parliament is understandable, this is the first time that it is being used to protect the dishonest, and that too so openly.
And what about the corrupt and the hoarders? Here's the PM's most detailed message to them.
When money returns to the bank, it loses its anonymity. Till now, every rupee leaves a trail. This changes the game, as the black money that did not have an address till now has been tagged with one. We now know who has it, where and when. Holders of black money may hide behind the bank accounts of others, but unlike cash holdings, they can be traced. In this game of hide and seek, they have a few days to hide. But the government has the time, mechanism, and more importantly, the will to seek them out. More interestingly, with the existence of such trails, the identification of one culprit invariably leads to the unearthing of even larger sources and schemes of corruption.
But back on track, regarding the effects of demonetization, the PM fended off charges that he has slowed the economy.
The multiplier effect of the introduction of money, which was till now uselessly hoarded and stocked away as cash, into the active economic system, will give the economy a further boost. Additional government revenue will be pushed into priority domains such as irrigation and rural housing, empowering the poor and needy.
And here's the Prime Minister on precisely how the recovered money will be used.
We took the demonetization decision not for some short-term windfall gain, but for a long-term structural transformation. Our objective was to clean up our economy and society of the menace of black money, purging the distrust, artificial pressures and other ills that came with it. The revenue collected will be used for the welfare of the poor, downtrodden and marginalized.
But isn't this an affront to the Prime Minister's own promise of maximum governance, minimum government? Here's what he thinks.
Earlier, the Income Tax Department used to shoot in the dark. Now people have voluntarily come forward and deposited money in their banks. The aim is to ensure that the honest taxpayer is not harassed or inconvenienced, while the dishonest tax evader is efficiently caught and punished. Beyond this, any erring officer or banker will be caught and punished. My government has zero tolerance for corruption.
But does the PM truly believe the pace of digital transactions can fill the massive cash gap caused by demonetization?
Digital transactions should not be viewed only as a short-term substitute to help through the period of cash shortage. That is not my objective. Digital transactions deliver multiple benefits. They facilitate proper accounting, and sizing of the formal economy. They provide greater ease and security in handling of money, especially for small businesses and the ordinary people. They also deliver greater tax compliance, ensuring that dishonest do not escape payment of their dues. Therefore, I see digital payment as a method of cleaning up the economy in the long run.
And the final question that has not fully been answered yet: will demonetization root out political corruption?
It is imperative that we figure out decisive ways of rooting out black money from politics. I have been regularly appealing for the same. I had asserted before the last parliament session itself that the need of the hour is to comprehensively relook and reform political funding. I have also repeatedly expressed concern about how our current system of multiple elections not only raises political expenditure, thereby hurting the economy, but also results in the nation perpetually remaining in election mode, stalling governance.
What you've just heard is the Prime Minister unplugged on his government's most thundering policy quake, the effects of which will be felt for a long time to come.
50 दिन के बाद ईमानदार लोगों की तकलीफ कम होना शुरू होगा और बेईमानों की तकलीफ बढ़ना शुरू होगा.
This is a special report with Raj Chengappa and the India Today magazine team in Delhi.
So here it is, on the stands very soon, the game changer Narendra Damodar Das Modi, newsmaker of the year. I'm joined now by India Today Group's editorial director publishing, Raj Chengappa. He scooped this interview. Raj, welcome. Also with us on this broadcast, editor of The Wire, M.K. Venu. Rajiv Dubey is the managing editor of our sister publication, Business Today magazine. With us is Shivna Tukral, managing director, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in India. Stanley Pingle is the India correspondent for The Economist magazine, and R. Jagannathan is a well-known financial journalist. He's currently editor of Swarajya Mag. Welcome to all my guests. I want to start with Raj, because you spent quite some time with the Prime Minister yesterday. The demonetization quake, all of us feeling the aftershocks. How's the man's body language? We've heard what he said. Tell us what you felt around you.
You know, he's the eye of the storm in many senses. And strangely, I mean, there was a tremendous calm about him. He exuded confidence. He seemed determined. You know, there was going to be no pushback. He was not defensive. He answered each of these questions with a kind of vigor and clarity. And you could see that he was clarifying very clearly that this was not an impulsive decision. This is not something that he did, or as people perceive it to be, just a short-term political benefit. That he was looking for long-term structural change of the economy. He defined it as a watershed moment, the act that he took. And he was willing to explain every single aspect about, any questions that you had about demonetization, why he did it, why could he have planned it better, was it, what did he think about these various steps, the multiple steps that they kept doing to prevent, it looked like the government had no plan, and they kept, reacting, more reactive than actually planning all those things, and then went into a little peep ahead. He wasn't, he felt he answered the critics that who said that, particularly, you had eminent economists talk about it, saying that they had expected growth to drop, and the entire effort had failed. Many defined it as a colossal blunder of the government. He was very, very clear that he expected growth to stabilize in the next couple of months, that the infusion of money that has come in, peculiarly...
So you're essentially saying that despite all the criticism, despite people so far not seeing any advantage, because ultimately people have to believe that this was useful for them, most people currently don't see that.
Absolutely.
The Prime Minister believes that this is just short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah, I think he emphasized that right through the interview, that he felt that the money coming back into the economy, I mean, everyone sort of said, where is the windfall? They expected a lot of the notes to be extinguished. His surprising answer was, look, I never expected it to be extinguished. I felt that all the money would come back. and that we'd actually done the deadline and allowed petrol bunks and everything else for the entire money to come back. And the larger point he made, that black money, the entire black money that was been accumulated over years is now out in the open. There is a financial trail. This money that has seeped into to come back in such large numbers into the banks and everything else will now be used for economic activity. And that itself would start spurring growth. He also hinted that the talk of the pain, he made it clear that he would ensure gain would happen. Now, probably he's going to mention some of that when he speaks day after tomorrow.
He's busted everyone's New Year plans. Then I can tell you we had to cancel all our reporters and producers offs on the 31st and the 1st. He's not big on New Year bashes, and now neither can our reporters be. So great scoop, Raj. We have a lot to talk about over the next 3 hours. I want to break this up part by part so that we can have a structured conversation. The first question we'll take, all of this, of course, coming out of the Prime Minister's interview. Question number 1. Has the Prime Minister been able to justify the rationale behind demonetization? And I want to quote just what the Prime Minister says. It would seem a matter of common sense to understand that if India's economy was weak, this decision would not have been taken. It was consciously taken when the economy is in good shape. As such, a sharp correction could have been made then to fortify the foundations to give it a further boost. You will also be aware that economic activity in India peaks during Diwali, after which there is a lull. Anticipating the transition challenges post-demonetization, we timed it accordingly to minimize disruption. I want to go across first to Stanley Pingle. He's been a big critic of demonetization, as has been a lot of the Western media. The Prime Minister's rationale, Stanley, is that only when the economy is going well can you take a decision as monumental as this. If the economy was in doldrums or there was an economic crisis, that wouldn't be the time to administer a shock of this nature. Despite all of what the Prime Minister is saying, the Western media especially remains unconvinced. What do you make of his answers to India Today magazine, Stanley?
Well, so that's the justification today. It wasn't necessarily the justification on the day of the announcement, and people will have noticed that the justification for the move has evolved over the past 50 days or so. The foreign media has been not uniformly, but generally critical of the move on the grounds that it's extremely unconventional, and it seems to deliver quite a lot of upfront pain, and the gain from it is, for now, quite unclear. Now, I think we're all waiting to see whether the coming months or indeed years justify the gains in the coming months or year justify what has been the short-term disruption, but it is abundantly clear that there's been short-term disruption, and that what was one of the most buoyant economies in Asia and in the world has been thrown into some degree of turmoil. Also, something which is worth noting is that the timing of this is extraordinary, if only for one thing, which is it was announced pretty much within 1 hour of America going to the polls. America going to the polls, as we well know, has resulted in a great surprise and a probable change in American monetary policy, and that's had an impact across the world, and particularly in emerging markets. So at a time when a great many people think that countries such as India should be focusing on how do you manage this complex transition as the Federal Reserve in the US moves to higher interest rates, India instead has to focus on this quite extraordinary set of challenges.
R. Jagannathan, the Prime Minister's rationale is it's only when the economy is strong can you administer a shock of this nature. Stanley Pingle and many critics argue that the rationale has constantly been evolving as they've seen the feedback, they've looked at the criticism, they've changed the original response. Do you think that is fair criticism, or do you believe this is what the Prime Minister and his core team had in mind from the very first day?
Look, when you're doing such a big move like demonetization with its millions of impacts and individuals responding to the move in different ways, anybody who thinks that it can be predicted how the thing is going to pan out is making a mistake. I don't think there is a single economist in the world who could have predicted anything, and nor even whatever the criticism is coming now. I don't think it will hold after 3 months or 6 months, because people are rapidly adapting to the reality. So, and Indians are, if nothing but rapid adapters to any change, any impulse that they see from the thing. So I think we should not see it purely from the point of view of the economists. I think they are making a mistake. There may be, definitely there's going to be pain, and there are definitely, but I think it is probably going to work out. So I think it's possible that the government may have miscalculated some of the things. Like, for example, if they thought 10 to 15% of the money is not going to come back, that now looks unlikely. You're likely to get thing. But that's okay. But I think, when you make, say, if you next do GST, are you so sure that you're going to get a higher revenue or lower revenue? You don't know. But you're going into it with a plan, and as and when you see the response, you will make the changes.
Shivnath Tukral, has the Prime Minister been adequately able to explain the rationale behind demonetization, and does this logic of administering the shock at a time when the economy is doing well, does that logic hold, Shivnath?
Rahul, firstly, congratulations to you and Raj for getting this interview just at the time when everybody's waiting to hear what he will say on 31st night. So good luck to you for 31st night as well. But just to tell you one basic thing, you don't fix your roof when the rain is coming down. You really fix your roof when the sun is shining. And for the Prime Minister to justify it in that sense, I think holds some merit. Secondly, I think in the comment that you guys played out, in terms of what are the big things he said, his most important comment I felt was to say that this is not a short-term fix. He's looking at it from a long-term point of view. And just to share with you, someone who has helped create Aadhaar, Nandan Nilekani, who spoke at our summit on Global Technology Summit in Bangalore, even he agrees with the fact that this is the first step. This is the march for India towards becoming a greater formal economy, which is the critical piece. So please, whoever is saying that is the rational justifying or not, or has he been able to communicate it or not, yes, there are certain negatives one needs to think of on execution, on the way RBI managed to handle it. For example, it didn't take demonetization. Why should you wait for demonetization to realize that 50% of your ATMs don't work? So we can keep commenting and criticizing on that. But the fact is, this is the first step towards using India's technology knowledge pool and the way policy is being dealt with now to make sure that you begin the march towards a formal economy. This will actually help your 400 million people who are not a part of the formal economy.
There is a certain currency in the logic that Shivnath and others are giving, that the only way to, like for example, from landlines to mobile, we leapfrogged several generations of telecommunication technology. Similarly, if we want to go from a predominantly cash-driven economy to a less cash economy, if not a cashless economy, the only way to do so is by administering some shock. As Guru Murthy told us, you can just allow this to drift along and the changes can be incremental, or you can do something radical and step up the pace.
I would agree, because if you look at the amount of digitization of transactions that has happened in the past 45 odd days, it's something that would not have been possible even by a lot of prodding in maybe 1, 2, 3 years. If you look at the amount of UPI transactions, they've gone up by something like 500%. Obviously the base was low, but if you look at the wallet transactions, they are up 42%. NEFT, which was a huge base, is up 16%. Credit and debit card transactions, again with a significant base, is up 35%. And USST, which is new, which is mobile to mobile, which is not smart mobiles, they are up 1,000%. So there has been a level of digitization which has been achieved in this,
which is unprecedented, and wouldn't have happened without demonetization. So four of our panelists buying into the Prime Minister's argument. I want to listen finally to M.K. Venu. He's been one of the critics of demonetization. We've heard the Prime Minister's rationale. Do you accept it, that the only way to have a transformational change is to do it when the going is good? Shivnath Tukral says you can't be fixing a roof when it's raining hard. Venu?
Last day.
Venu, do you hear me?
Yeah, Rahul, first of all, you must remember that when demonetization was announced, our economy was not particularly doing very well, in the sense that it was the GDP growth was in fact slowing compared to the previous year, and employment, the growth in employment was down 65% in 2015-16, and there were many indicators which were suggesting that partly because of global headwinds, India was not really decisively, moving, picking up and moving on to a higher growth plateau. So therefore, I don't accept this argument that everything was totally hunky-dory, and I don't accept Mr. Jean Dres's argument that it was like shooting a racing car. We were not racing. Probably we were cruising at about 55 kilometers an hour. And number two, today, Rahul, in your interview, Prime Minister said that all the black money has come back, at least is back in the system. Now, how do you know the money that's come back in the system is black money? And he claimed that the authorities, income tax authorities, enforcement were ahead of those who were pushing black money back into the system. I don't think they are ahead because a lot of the money have been pushed by businesses into legitimate.
That's a very good question, and that's part two of my debate. So let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet, Venu. Those are two very good points you've touched on. Because my next two questions are: has the great Indian Jugaad factory outsmarted the Prime Minister's best laid plans? And also, if all the cash in circulation has come back into the banking sector, is this a victory for demonetization, or does it show that you really don't know, as Venu says, which part of the money is black, and the income tax apparatus is simply unable to try and find out because they simply can't compete? And look at the huge amount of money that's come in. How many defaulters will they catch? We'll talk about that when we come back on the other side of a very quick break. We have a lot more from the Prime Minister's interview as well. What you've seen so far is just a very small excerpt. I'll get you more portions from the Prime Minister's exclusive interview to India Today magazine. Before we move any further and continue our discussion, let me get you some more key excerpts from what the Prime Minister told India Today.
The 500 rupee and 1000 rupee currency notes presently in use will no longer be legal tender from midnight to night, that is 8th November 2016. The 500 and 1000 rupee notes hoarded by anti-national and anti-social elements will become just worthless piece of paper.
A bombshell at a stroke. Around dinner time, the Prime Minister invalidates 86% of currency in circulation.
The Reserve Bank will hereafter make arrangements to limit the share of high denomination notes in the total currency in circulation.
The nation was blindsided. Overnight, the highest denomination notes were outlawed. And then began the chaos. Dismally long queues spilled out from the parched branches of banks and ATMs for weeks. The knock-on effect of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's audacious experiment to crush the black economy, paralyzed businesses, farming and sales, persistent cash shortages, battered the poor and the middle class hardest. For the first time since demonetization, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken his mind extensively. In a mega exclusive interview with India Today's group editorial director Raj Chengappa, the Prime Minister has candidly revealed the reasons and the timing behind his radical step to abolish 500 and 1000 rupee notes abruptly. Despite massive criticism, the Prime Minister is satisfied at the outcome. This is precisely what Prime Minister Modi said to India Today's group editorial director Raj Chengappa.
Black money has all been forced out in the open, whomsoever it may belong to, whether it is corrupt politicians, bureaucrats, businessmen or professionals. Counterfeit notes, which our intelligence agencies had reported to be available in high volumes with our enemies, have been instantly neutralized. Similarly, cash held by terrorists, Maoists and other extremists has also been neutralized.
The Prime Minister also revealed what led him to scrap the most popular currency at this point in time when the Indian economy is rapidly growing. According to the Prime Minister, the move was carefully thought out. He tells India Today,
it was consciously taken when the economy is in a good shape. As such, a sharp correction could have only been made to fortify its foundations and to give it a further boost.
He told India Today. And the Prime Minister chose the post-Diwali period for a reason, to minimize disruption when economic activity slows down after peaking. He says,
anticipating the transition challenges post-demonetization, we timed it accordingly to minimize disruption.
The Prime Minister said, but he stoutly defended frequent modifications in policy, changes he explained were prompted by forces trying to sabotage his government's assault on black money.
Regarding the frequent modifications, one must be able to distinguish between Niti and Raniti and not put them in the same basket. The decision of demonetization, which reflects our Niti, is unequivocally clear, unwavering and categorical. Our Raniti, however, needed to be different, aptly summarized by the age-old saying of tu dal dal, main paat paat. We must stay 2 steps ahead of the enemy.
Said the Prime Minister. His government, insisted Prime Minister Modi, reacted quickly to issues that surfaced in the aftermath of the currency ban.
When problems are identified, we respond promptly and take necessary steps. Far from indicating poor implementation, this speaks of our agility in responding quickly and keeping up with the evolving situation. I know many will prefer if we issue one guideline and allow them to walk roughshod over it.
He remarked, and that's how he countered his predecessor, Dr. Manmohan Singh's harsh forecast that the demonetization exercise would hurt growth. The move, Prime Minister Modi tells India Today, will rather formalize the economy and empower the underprivileged.
The multiplier effect of introduction of money, which was till now hoarded and stocked away as cash into the active economic system, will give the economy a further boost. Additional government revenue will be pushed into priority domains such as irrigation and rural housing, empowering the poor and needy.
That's not all. The Prime Minister spoke at length about his vision. Keep watching India Today's super exclusive with Narendra Modi for what's next on his agenda.
So if all the cash that was out in circulation, even if not in constant use, comes back into banking coffers, is that then a success or failure of demonetization? I want to introduce our panelists once again. Raj Chengappa, our editorial director who got that interview, Rajiv Dubey, our colleague from Business Today magazine, Stanley Pingle from The Economist, MK Venu, Shivna Tukral, and also with us is R. Jagannathan. I want to put that question first to Raj Chengappa, because this, no matter what government strategists say now, the original estimate, according to government sources themselves, was that between 3 and 4 lakh crore rupees will not come back. Now, we're already told that about 14.5 lakh rupees have come back. There's still a little bit of time to go. Given the current levels of currency coming back into the coffers, does this mean that the government's original estimates have been laid aside?
You know, the surprising answer that the Prime Minister gave is that he turned the argument right around its head. He said that he believed that a lot of the, or probably knew, being the Prime Minister, that a lot of the 500 rupee notes and 1000 rupee notes that were extinguished were never really in the market. Their estimates, possibly, he didn't quote the estimates, was something like 6 lakh crores out of the 15 lakh crores. That's a hell of a lot of money. He thinks that this much money coming back into the banking system, strangely, we may not have cash, but the banks now are cash rich. And this could be used to disperse money cheaply. And if you look at the answer that he goes beyond, when he's asked what will happen, there are 2 ways that he could possibly get money. One is, because as the penalties come in, And since a lot of this money that has come in was unaccounted, he says there's a financial trail, there's a paper trail, we will get these guys. So even if you take a conservative estimate of about 80,000 crores to 1 lakh crores, there is a bit of windfall that he can get, but that will take time certainly to happen. The second thing he says is, I'm going to start now moving a lot of this money into productive uses, and he's also very clear that all the pain that he had caused these people, there would be some gain. And so I think he would unfurl that in some steps.
But Venu, this is compelling logic. The fact that you've got a lot of money which is out in the market but not in constant circulation, people are hoarding that cash. Now all that money has been disclosed. So there is a financial trail behind all the cash. You can still try and take it out, but with the kind of technology now available, it's much easier for the government to track it than ever before. Is that not a strong logic for why demonetization has worked, even if a lot of this currency hasn't been extinguished? Venu?
Yeah. Rahul, first of all, I think the government is completely mistaken in its analysis that 15 lakh crores, all this cash was lying under some people's pillows and they were not in use. In fact, in some ways they were being used in the economy, they were lubricating the economy. Now they are in the banking system. Now you'll have to see once the withdrawal restrictions are removed, Rahul, we have to see how much of these deposits will go away. We will go back to the activities which were for which they were being used. So all the promises that the PM is making is for the future, and he says people have suffered pain, but from 1st January onwards they will gain. Now everything that the government is saying, it's like a promissory note in the future. So far on present evidence, all that we have seen is pain. So let us wait and see what happens in the next 4-5 months.
Okay, let Jagannathan respond to this. What is the guarantee that the money that's now come into the banking coffers will not ultimately become black money again? Because ultimately, if that cash goes out, people could start hoarding it or use it as back, because till the time there is corruption, till the time there are corrupt babus, there will always be the corruption demand and some supply chain which hasn't been interrupted yet. Therefore, even if the government can claim that the money has come back into the banking coffers, nothing stops this money from becoming black again 6 months later.
Yes, absolutely. I think what he has done is he has taken a hit at the stock of black cash held as cash, and that has dented the thing. But I think the important thing is the psychology change this brings, because it's like the proverbial frog that's sitting in the bucket and it's being heated slowly. There is no need for the system or it to change. It's only when you give it a shock that it will jump out of the water. So what the demonetization has essentially done is that it cannot be business as usual. So whether some of the money becomes black or remains white or whatever it is, I think the shock is necessary in order to say that things have to change. And that signaling is done one thing.
Shivnath, do you buy that argument?
The banks will also benefit because
the traders, the businessmen who've been, keeping their money away from the taxman now realize that it's not worth it. If you try and save on taxes, or if you try and hide your income, ultimately the government or the taxman will get you. Therefore, it's better to live a clean life and to pay your taxes. Has that message gone strongly enough, Shivnath?
Rahul, three things I would like to say here. Firstly, this lot that you are referring to, who were probably on the margins of trying not to be honest, wanting to be honest, but still not having the incentive enough, for them the rule of the game has changed. Now they have to live in an environment where they need to expect the unexpected. One, because having deposited the money that they were sitting on, they do leave a trail, which is what the Prime Minister is referring to. Yes, if we assume for a second that the system will be honest and system will go after the real culprits, there will be a sense of fear, which is a good thing. Number two, very important, not everybody is dishonest. So let's assume not every Indian who was sitting with cash is illegit or dishonest. But they needed a big push, and this kind of a policy push has come through demonetization, where I know of my friends, and many of your friends I'm sure have spoken to you, who were dealing in cash in a legit manner and maybe paying taxes, not paying the entire amount, have gone and got a POS machine in their system and say, look, I don't mind making the whole thing electronic, I want to live hassle-free. The third and the most important thing, you referred to a point saying, what is the incentive that more money will not become black as we go ahead? There is a big disincentive now, because Once the system has the data points, it is about Prime Minister Modi's mechanism or the governance structure as to how they use that data point intelligently. So obviously you and I will not be in the same bracket of data which is tracking those who were dishonest. So clearly there is a distinguishing between the ones who are honest and willing to pay taxes.
No, but the counter to that, and I want to put that question to Stanley Pingle, is that one of the things the last 50 days have shown is that our administrative mechanism is very weak. The banking sector has many leakages. The income tax department is one of the most corrupt departments of the country. Suddenly, you've given so much more power to the taxman. And therefore, even though you're now assuming that the government has the mechanism to monitor where the cash is going, ultimately there are a bunch of people who don't have a stellar record. Is this, in some senses, the coming back of the taxman, the license Raj? Is that a fear globally as well, Stanley?
Probably. It has to be. I think the broader point is you now have a great deal of policy uncertainty around India. Investors internationally look at India and they've generally liked the reform story. They've generally been quite keen on the Modi government, but demonetization caught them off guard a little bit. Coming back a little bit to what was said a minute ago, I think the idea of formalizing the economy is great. And this will undoubtedly help nudge some people into a formal economy. The question that people have to answer is, are you getting the most bang for your buck? This was an incredibly disruptive episode for India. Everybody will have spent time queuing at the bank. Everybody will know people who have lost income because of this. Could it have been achieved? Could the aim of formalization have been achieved more easily in some other ways? If we say that India will lose 1 to maybe 3% of GDP because of this, that is a huge amount of money that the government could have spent in other ways instead. For example, pushing UPI, which is a fantastic new payments mechanism, which clearly was an afterthought to this whole thing, rather than the main purpose of it. For example, investing in these big data techniques that we've just been discussing. So I'm not convinced that pushing the Indian economy through this massive shock was the best way of delivering what could be quite modest benefits.
This could have been done in other ways, argues Stanley Pingle from The Economist, that you can achieve the same result. For example, prepare for digital gateways much more in advance, instead of it seeming that it's almost like an afterthought. Wasn't mentioned in the original address. All this transition towards digital payments started getting spoken of later. So critics saying you're trying to change the goalpost as you go along.
Well, I mean, if you look at you have to remember that on November 8th, we didn't know that there's going to be an IDS coming. The IDS has actually also accelerated the money coming into the banking system, because remember, 50% of the IDS money will actually go into the taxes. So that remains with the government. 25% will remain with the government under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Rojana.
But there wasn't supposed to be a new income disclosure scheme. You already said that the last one would be the last.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So that's what Stanley says, that there's a lot of policy uncertainty. People come into India, now they're not certain what is the ecosystem in which they'll operate. Suddenly you could have a disruptive nuclear bomb going off, which upsets the whole ecosystem.
If you look at, there's another aspect of this which has still not caught the attention, is that the government has been consistently saying that this is not just going to be a less cash economy, it's also going to be a less currency economy. Now, less currency has the same impact on the balance sheet of RBI and the government coffers as money not coming back into the system will be. You know, 15.44 lakh crore will be extinguished on 31st of March. Of that, if the government is going to, if you go by the trend of the 2000 rupee notes printing, that they only printed 60% of the notes that they had actually intended to print. Now, if the printing is going to be 3/4 or 2/3 of the total 15.44, you have actually a bonanza there waiting to be utilized between 3.5 lakh crore to up to 5 lakh crore.
The counter argument to this is that even if you say that the number of digital payments, and Rajiv just read out a whole host of figures, have jumped up, say 200%, 1000%, 50%, the base is so small that in the overall context of the Indian economy, in the overall context of having 1.25 billion people, it's really it's like a needle in a haystack. It's not very big. Even if we're increasing the number of digital payments, we can't take away from the reality that for a very long time, India will still remain a cash-driven economy. Jaggi?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I think the digital economy will be achieved in stages, and it will not happen in one giant leap. But let's remember, Indians are very quick adapters. I mean, we went from zero almost mobile phones to 1 billion mobile phones. So how long do you think we'll take to reduce cash from 12% to 8%? I think we'll do it in 2 or 3 years. I don't think it will take that much longer. I think we will go substantially digital, and in the rural areas it will be even faster adoption, because that's where no bank branch reaches. So you can jump leapfrog over business correspondents.
That's a good counter. That's a very good argument. See, mobile technology. Earlier people said in rural India, Venu, people would know how to use mobile phones. See the way rural India has adopted and taken to mobile phones. The same thing could happen with digital technology as well, and suddenly all these naysayers will also have to take their criticism back, because people will adapt. Ultimately, Indians are jugadu. They have to adjust, they have to adapt. This forces them to move towards digital technology much faster than they would have otherwise done. Venu?
Yeah. Rahul, I want to say something here. I support this move to go progressively digital and not like overnight push people to digital. But Rahul, I want to give you a very interesting piece of data. I read in a financial paper that Kenya has 70% of its adult population doing mobile wallet transactions. Now, Kenya has not been able to, solve its corruption problem. It remains one of the most corrupt nations as per the Transparency International pecking order. So my point, Rahul, is even if you go digital, even if India succeeds in moving digital in the next, say, 10 years, will we have a state which is not rent-seeking? Today, the big contradiction is this entire enforcement is being pushed by a state which is the biggest rent seeker. Is our bureaucracy, whatever, 20-30 million center and state together, bureaucracy will overnight stop taking bribes? Will
That's a good point, Raj. You want to respond to that quickly before I take a break? That the Babus are still the same, the income tax commissioners are still the same. How do you make them less corrupt? You can talk about a corruption-free economy, but how do you deal with the demand part of the corruption?
You know, I asked the Prime Minister this, and his point is that firstly, the income tax officers that is being, the key charge is being levied against them, that they will misuse their powers. You mentioned earlier the IT Raj would come back. He says that once you have a financial trail, once you declare all your money, once it's all there, the discretionary powers of the IT officers actually begins to diminish. That's the first point he makes. Second, he says, is that while everyone talks of, there's going to be so much work, there's so many million accounts that they'll have to scrutinize, he says, look, we can employ technology. There's big data, big analytics that we can bring in as a nation, and we're pretty good at that. I mean, we are the software kings of the world in some senses. So if you employ that, as Nandan Nilekani has been talking about, let's also make it very clear that when the Prime Minister spoke about digital transactions, he didn't say that this was the panacea that will cure all the ills that had happened. He only said that this would spur it on. He was very clear that it will just be probably it will take many years to happen, but this would give it a greater impetus. So in terms of the overall argument as to whether this was, whether all the money had come back and therefore it's a failure, I think he was very clear. He turned the argument the other way and said, look, we knew there was going to be that much money coming in. We're going to utilize it better. We now have a hangover. What was there, what is stashed away in cupboards, that will now have velocity in banks. What they talk about, the velocity of money, you put money in banks, that has a far greater velocity than keeping it as cash.
Okay, this is where I end the editors roundtable. Up next is the Netas roundtable. I'll be joined by Union Information and Broadcasting Minister Venkaiah Naidu. Leaders from the opposition will be joining us as well. Piyush Goyal has promised to join us. I've just received an SMS from his office that he's been called by the Prime Minister to Lok Kalyanmar. So hopefully that meeting will end and he'll be able to join us as well. And we look at the political ramifications of Notbandi. The Prime Minister says this should have been done 40 years ago. So should Indira Gandhi's government after the 71 war have gone in for demonetization? Would that at all have been sensible? Apart from this, will demonetization deliver political dividends for the BJP, most importantly in Uttar Pradesh. We'll start the Netas roundtable. We've got more excerpts from the Big India Today interview. This magazine will soon be on the stands. You can sit back and read the interview at leisure as well. We resume our coverage on the other.